Hi everyone, I'm doing a reaction video today on a CP24 article that I think gave misinformation and I want to correct it or at least explain what's happening. I'm going to play this article. I hope I don't get taken down. I'll put the link to it so there's no copyright issues, but let's play it and see what happens.
Talia describes her parents as hard workers who saved to buy a cottage in 1998 and always put money away in their RRSPs for their retirement. 5 years ago, they sold their home and made the cottage their principal residence. When they both died last year, Galia's mother's RRSP rolled into her father's for a total of $715,000. When her father died, the RRSP had to be taxed as income at about 50%, and there was capital gains on the cottage. The family had a tax bill of $659,000.
It made me more angry than anything. We've just lost both of our parents inside of 11 months.
Galia says to avoid selling the cottage, almost the entire amount of RRSPs her parents saved had to go to pay the tax bill. She says she and her brother expected some of the funds and were shocked almost nothing was left over.
Okay, I do want to just go over some of the facts. So the couple that passed away in roughly the same year, which is pretty sad, they had a cottage and a principal residence. So a principal residence, something that is ordinarily inhabited, I don't know how that's defined within the CRA, it is tax-free. So if you live in a house, you get to sell it tax-free. If you made $1 million tax-free, but they had two properties at the same time. So let me just explain something briefly. You only get to designate one property as your principal residence at one time. And that designation happens upon sale. You don't designate it while you're living in it. So let's say they had the house for 10 years, if I just put an X here, and then they owned the cottage. Let's overlap it, let's say a few years. If I just do this. So here's what happens. When they sold the house, it's their principal residence. So I'm guessing they didn't designate the cottage for these years, this overlap that they owned it. So this was all tax-free. But then do you see these overlap years? If they already claimed the principal residence exemption on the house, the cottage has to pay principal residence because it has to pay a capital gains tax as an investment property. But these years, that can be their principal residence because they sold the house, lived in it. But these overlap years, it does not count. Now, it's a little deceiving when it said they paid $659,000 and they didn't get anything left on the RSP. So it doesn't really work that way. The issue is, on their final return, so when you pass away, you have a deemed disposition. So CRA goes back in time and they're like, hey, this couple sold it 1 minute before they died. It's as if you withdrew all of it at the same time. So if they had $759,000, I think that was the number. So at your tax at the highest rate, let's just for argument's sake say it's 50%. So that's $379,000. Just because of the RSP being deemed to have been disposed at the moment of death or right before death. So that's $379,000 just in the RSP. So when they said they expected some money left over and all the RSP was gone, it's because they said they wanted to keep the cottage. So in order to keep the cottage, the capital gain, they had to sell all of the RSP to pay the tax on it. Here's the other thing. So we have $379,000 here, but then the total was $659,000. So let's say the gain on the cottage was 300,000, and that's a capital gain. So in order to get a capital gain of 300,000, you would need, let's say divided by 0.25, because 50% is tax-free and at the highest tax rate of 50%. So let's say the highest amount of tax that you'd pay on a capital gain on a cottage. Let me know if I'm doing the math here right. They made a $1.2 million gain. So the RSP was $759,000 and they had a gain on the cottage, just a gain, not the purchase price, of, let's say they almost had around $2 million portfolio that they got from their parents. I'm not too upset that they paid $659,000. It does suck. With a little more planning, if it would have been gifted over to the kids before death, if they did some better tax planning, I think they could have avoided $659,000. But it is deceiving when they said the RSP had to be sold in order to pay the tax on it. No, they wanted to keep the cottage, and in order to keep it, this $1.2 million gain, they had to sell the RSP and they had nothing left over. So it's a little deceiving, the article. I know that the person lost their parents both in the same year and it's pretty devastating, but you wanted to keep the gain. You wanted to keep the cottage. The parents had an unrealized capital gain on it for all these years, that it was an investment property as their second residence. They didn't pay the tax on it. You have to, so they passed that burden on to you. Could have been some better tax planning. Here's the other issue. If the house went up, you can designate upon sale, right? If the house went up $1,000 a year for these 10 years, but the cottage went up $100,000 a year for all this time, if they designated the wrong house, the wrong property, like even if you ordinarily inhabited this, you could have designated the cottage to save the gain. So ideally, in hindsight, when you sell something, you have to estimate which one will make the highest amount of capital appreciation and which one do you want to shelter the most. They could have incorrectly sheltered the house, which didn't appreciate much in value. The cottage might have appreciated more in value, and they probably incorrectly designated the wrong place. Even if they didn't know the rules, if they're like, hey, we live in the cottage now, that's our principal residence, but it doesn't count during these years of overlap. The article is deceiving. It does suck how much tax they pay. I don't think anyone should be paying 50% tax. Like, I don't want to do it either. But the CP24 article and the way the woman's complaining, it is deceiving. You're paying, you don't have any more left on your parents' RSP from the will, from what they left you, because you wanted to keep the cottage that had, I'm guessing, a $1.2 million gain. So they had a multi-million-dollar portfolio that they inherited from their parents, and now they're upset that they had to pay some tax on it. It's kind of, I don't know. Cry me a river. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if my math on this is correct. Thanks for watching and tune into the next one.